Welcome to another deep dive. Today, we're going to be exploring something that feels super rare these days. The power of stillness.
Ooh, stillness. I like it.
We found this really cool excerpt called Week 10, The Power of Stillness, How to Think Clearly in a Noisy World.
Okay.
And it's formatted kind of like it's from an online course or a newsletter.
Gotcha.
But it really ties into this feeling that I think we could all relate to, being bombarded with information and notifications and demands. And like, when was the last time you truly felt quiet, like inside and out?
It is a fascinating paradox of our time, isn't it? We say we crave stillness, yet we seem to do everything we can to avoid it.
Right. And the author kicks things off with this analogy of a busy street. So like, imagine you're standing on a busy street corner.
Okay, I'm with you.
All the noise and the motion around you is just like, whoa, totally overwhelming.
Yeah.
But then you imagine yourself inside a car, driving down that same street in that same movement, somehow feels, I don't know, almost peaceful. So it makes me wonder, is it really about eliminating all the busyness, or is it more about, finding that inner quiet space within yourself?
That's a great way to put it. I think it's like finding that inner car,
Yes.
right? That space where you can be moving through the world but still feel centered. And the excerpt actually talks about this as a war inside your head.
Ooh.
It's this constant battle between like past regrets and future anxieties and all the demands of right now, right? So not
Yeah.
only are we surrounded by noise, but we're also kind of like generating more of it internally.
Totally.
Yeah.
And then the author brings up this point about how uncomfortable so many of us are with actual silence.
Mm.
Like, think about it. We're constantly reaching for our phones, turning on music, the TV, anything to just like avoid just being.
Yeah.
Do you ever catch yourself doing that?
Oh, absolutely. It's like we've forgotten how to simply exist without some kind of external input, you know?
It's true.
And the author uses this really striking visual of a snow globe to illustrate this point. So, when you're constantly shaking that snow globe, it's just chaos, right?
Uh-huh.
But when you let it sit still, everything settles and the scene becomes clear.
Oh, I love this.
It's a great visual,
Oh,
right?
okay. But here's where things get really interesting for me.
Okay.
The excerpt goes on to say that, this need for stillness, this isn't some new age fad, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's been around for centuries.
It's true. It's ancient wisdom for a modern problem, really.
Totally. Like, for example, the Stoics,
Mm.
right? They were all about finding this inner tranquility amidst the chaos of life.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's that famous quote from Marcus Aurelius. He was, the Roman emperor and philosopher.
Yeah.
He said, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul."
Powerful stuff.
Right. And it wasn't just about like, feeling calm. It was about being able to make clear, rational decisions. And there's this quote from Lao Tzu, the founder of Taoism: "Allow the muddy water to settle and it will become clear." So instead of fighting the mud, you just, you let it resolve itself naturally.
Right, just being with it.
Exactly.
And even the samurai warriors, known for their like ferocity and discipline,
Right.
they trained in something called fudoshin, which is basically the art of remaining calm and centered, even in the face of like extreme danger.
Well, yeah.
They saw stillness as a tactical advantage.
I mean, imagine that. The
Yeah.
calmer you are, the better you can assess a situation and respond strategically.
Exactly. And, if those guys needed stillness back then when life was, arguably less chaotic than it is now, what does that say about us today?
That is such a good point. I mean, they were battling physical threats, right? But we're dealing with this constant barrage of information and notifications and deadlines.
It's nonstop, isn't it?
It really is. And the author makes this point that if we don't prioritize stillness, we risk losing not just our focus, but our sense of self. It's like we become so fragmented by all the noise that we kind of forget who we are underneath it all.
You lose that connection to your core, to your essence.
Yeah, it's a scary thought, right?
It is. But thankfully, the excerpt doesn't just leave us with that warning. It actually gives us some very practical techniques for cultivating stillness, which we'll explore right after this. Welcome back to our deep dive into stillness. Before we jump into those techniques that the author mentions, I wanted to touch on something we were chatting about earlier. That idea that even warriors saw stillness as this like tactical advantage.
Oh yeah, the Fudoshin thing.
Exactly.
I've heard that term before. But to be honest, I always pictured it as more of a Zen, like meditative state.
Right.
Not
Yeah.
something you'd use in like an actual battle, you know?
Right.
It is fascinating, isn't it? The way we tend to kind of romanticize these ancient practices without fully grasping their practical applications. So Fudo-shin, in the context of samurai training, it wasn't just about like inner peace. It was about cultivating an unshakable mental and emotional state
Okay.
that allowed them to make clear judgments and take decisive action, right in the heat of combat.
So it's like by being still, they were actually more prepared to react effectively.
Exactly.
That seems kind of counterintuitive.
It is. It's about finding that balance between stillness and readiness, between calmness and the ability to respond swiftly and decisively when you need to.
Right.
And that's something we can all apply to our modern lives, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. I mean, think about how often we react like impulsively to things,
Oh, all the time.
whether it's a stressful email or a frustrating conversation. What if we could tap into that Fudo-shin state and respond with more clarity and intention?
Exactly. It's about creating that space between stimulus and response.
Okay.
That gap where we can choose our actions rather than just, reacting out of habit or emotion. And that's where these practical techniques that the excerpt talks about, that's where they come in. Should we dive into those?
Yes, please. I'm really curious to hear more about them. That first one, floor time, it sounded surprisingly simple, maybe even a bit weird.
It does sound a bit unconventional, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But there's a profound wisdom in its simplicity. The idea is you just lie down on the floor
Right.
for a few minutes, no distractions, you just allow yourself to be still. It's about letting go of tension, surrendering to gravity, allowing your mind and body to settle.
It's almost like hitting the reset button,
Yeah.
on your entire system. But I have to admit, I'm a bit skeptical. Would lying on the floor really make that much of a difference?
Well, consider this. The excerpt connects floor time to a motto used by elite special forces. They say, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. It's about recognizing that slowing down and becoming present can actually lead to greater efficiency and effectiveness in everything you do.
Huh. That's an interesting connection. So it's not about being lazy or unproductive.
Right.
It's about using stillness to optimize our actions.
Exactly. Think about it this way. When we're rushing around in a frenzy, we're more prone to making mistakes, forgetting things, feeling overwhelmed. But when we take a few moments to ground ourselves, to clear our minds, we can approach tasks with more focus, more precision, more intention.
Okay. I'm starting to see the potential here. But I have to ask, have you ever actually tried floor time?
I have, actually, and I'll admit, it was a bit strange at first. My mind was racing, trying to fill the silence with thoughts and to-do lists. But as I continued to focus on my breath and the feeling of my body against the floor, I could actually feel a shift. My thoughts slowed down, my muscles relaxed, and a sense of calm washed over me.
Wow, that sounds amazing. Maybe I need to give it a try. What about that second technique, micro pauses? Is that something you can do anywhere, anytime?
Absolutely. It's all about incorporating these tiny pockets of stillness throughout your day.
Okay.
The idea is to pause before reacting to anything. An email, a phone call, a stressful situation. You're basically hitting that pause button on autopilot and creating a small gap between stimulus and response.
So instead of immediately firing back a snappy email or reacting defensively in a conversation, you take a breath and choose a more thoughtful response.
Precisely. It's about interrupting those habitual patterns and creating space for more conscious choices. And it doesn't have to be a long pause. Even just a few seconds can make a world of difference.
Okay. That seems doable. I can definitely see how that could help with managing stress and avoiding unnecessary conflicts. And what about that third technique, spending time in nature? I feel like that's something most people instinctively understand.
It is. There's something inherently restorative about being surrounded by the natural world, whether it's a walk in the park, a hike in the woods, or simply sitting under a tree. Nature has this way of calming our minds and soothing our souls.
It's like nature operates on a different timeline, a slower, more rhythmic pace that kind of reminds us to slow down and breathe.
Beautifully put. It's like nature embodies stillness in its very essence. The trees stand tall and unyielding, the rivers flow effortlessly, the stars twinkle patiently in the night sky. It's a powerful reminder that we don't have to force things, that we can trust in the natural flow of life.
It makes me think of that Japanese practice of forest bathing or Shinrin-yoku, which is essentially about immersing yourself in the sights and sounds and smells of a forest environment. I read somewhere that it can actually have like measurable health benefits.
It's true. Studies have shown that forest bathing can lower blood pressure, reduce stress hormones, boost the immune system, and even improve mood and cognitive function.
It makes sense when you think about it. We evolved in nature, so it's only natural that our bodies and minds would respond positively to being in these environments.
It's like we're hardwired to connect with nature's rhythms and find solace in its stillness. And in a world that's constantly bombarding us with stimulation and demands, that connection to nature becomes even more vital. It's
Okay.
a sanctuary where we can recharge, recalibrate, and rediscover our inner peace.
I love that. So we've got these three techniques: floor time for like a full system reset,
Uh-huh.
micro pauses for navigating those daily stresses,
Yeah.
and nature as a sort of refuge for recalibrating and reconnecting.
I like it.
But but I'm curious, is stillness something you can get better at? Like, do these techniques actually train your mind to be more still over time?
That's a great question. And it gets to the heart of why cultivating stillness is an ongoing practice. It's not about achieving some perfect state of unwavering calm, but rather about developing a capacity for stillness that grows stronger with each conscious effort.
So it's like building a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets.
That's a great analogy. It's about recognizing that our minds are naturally inclined towards activity and distraction, and it takes consistent effort to gently guide them back towards stillness. The more we practice, the easier it becomes to access that inner quiet, even amidst the busyness of our lives.
And the excerpt also mentions this poem, which we won't read in its entirety here, but talks about finding music and power in stillness. It almost sounds like stillness isn't just the absence of something, but a source of energy in itself.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And it connects to the idea that stillness isn't about passivity or withdrawal from the world. It's about cultivating a presence, an awareness that allows us to engage with life more fully and meaningfully. It's about finding that inner strength and clarity that allows us to navigate challenges with grace, to connect with others authentically, and to contribute to something larger than ourselves.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. It's not just about chilling out. It's about being more present, more intentional, more, I guess, alive.
Exactly. And as we move on to the final part of our deep dive, we'll explore those benefits of stillness in more depth. We'll look at how cultivating this inner peace can ripple outwards, impacting not just our individual lives, but also our relationships, our communities, and even the world around us.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We've been talking all about this power of stillness and, these techniques for finding it. But I think it's time we tackle, like, the big question: why should we even care? Like, what does this all add up to in a world that's constantly telling us to go, go, go?
It's interesting you frame it that way because one of the biggest takeaways from this excerpt for me isn't even stated directly.
Okay.
It's this implication that a world, full of people who value stillness, that would be a vastly different place.
Okay, unpack that for me a bit. Like, what do you mean?
Well, we've talked about the individual benefits, right? Like less stress, clearer thinking, all
Yeah.
that. But imagine those effects, scaled up. What if most people were less reactive, more thoughtful in their actions? How would that change our conversations, our decision making, the way we approach conflict?
Yeah. I can see how that would be a huge game changer. Less road rage, fewer Twitter wars, maybe even like more productive political debates. But is that realistic? Can stillness really have that much of an impact on like the world?
It might sound idealistic, but consider those historical examples again, right? The Stoics, the Taoists, the samurai, they weren't just seeking stillness for personal enlightenment. They believed it made them better leaders, better citizens, better able to contribute to their communities.
That's a good point. I always kind of pictured those practices as being pretty, individualistic. But maybe I'm missing the bigger picture here.
Exactly. They understood that inner peace isn't just about feeling good. It's about how you show up in the world.
Right.
It's about having the clarity and the presence to act in accordance with your values, to build strong relationships, to make decisions that benefit not just yourself, but the people around you.
So it's almost like a ripple effect.
Mm-hmm.
Stillness starts within, but then it radiates outwards, impacting everything from like our personal interactions to, potentially even society as a whole.
Precisely. And that's why I find this topic so compelling. It's not just self-help. It's about cultivating a quality that can make us better humans,
Yeah.
better equipped to navigate the complexities of our, interconnected world.
Okay, I'm definitely starting to see the bigger picture now.
Yeah.
But it also makes me wonder, if stillness is so powerful, Why isn't everyone doing it?
Right.
Like, what are the barriers here?
Well, I think as we've been discussing, there are like both internal and external factors at play. Our brains, they're wired for novelty and stimulation. So finding stillness requires a conscious effort to counter that.
Right. It's like our default setting is to be constantly doing something.
Yeah.
Plus, we're just bombarded with messages telling us to be productive,
Oh, yeah.
to optimize every minute of our day,
Hustle culture.
to never slow down. It's exhausting.
It is a cultural mindset that we need to become aware of, and actively challenge. We've come to associate stillness with laziness or unproductiveness, when in reality it's a source of strength, creativity and connection.
That's so true. It's like we need to reclaim stillness and redefine what it means to be truly productive. And maybe those techniques we talked about earlier, the floor time, the micro pauses, spending time in nature, those can be a good starting point for people who want to, incorporate more stillness into their lives.
Absolutely. And remember, it's not about achieving some perfect state of like Zen-like calm, right?
Right.
It's about making small conscious choices throughout your day to step off that treadmill of busyness and reconnect with your inner quiet. Even a few minutes here and there can make a difference.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I think it's fitting to circle back to that final question posed by the author of the excerpt. Where do you find stillness?
It's such a simple but like profound question, right? It is. And it's a question that each of us needs to answer for ourselves. It's about identifying those practices, those spaces, those moments that allow you to like step out of the chaos and tap into that inner calm. It could be meditation, it could be walking in nature, could be listening to music, or even just, enjoying a quiet cup of coffee in the morning.
Beautifully said. And for anyone listening, I encourage you to really reflect on that question. Where do you find stillness? And how can you create more of those moments in your own life? Because as we've discovered in this deep dive, the power of stillness, it isn't just about personal peace.
Right.
It's about cultivating a quality that can transform our lives, our relationships, and ultimately the world around us. Thanks for joining us.